Thank you for participating in the Recorder's City Government Town Hall. I'm Sylvia Benavides, today's moderator. Mayoral candidate Jody Brown was invited to attend, but she declined the offer. Due to the coronavirus, questions from Albion residents were gathered in advance of today's event. Social distancing, mask wearing, hand sanitizing are all in effect. Reporter Michelle Mueller and I will ask the candidates a series of at least 5 questions. The candidates will have 2.5 minutes to answer with an additional 30 seconds to wind up their thoughts. People overwhelmingly requested that their question be asked to more than one candidate, and even to candidates outside of their precinct. So many questions will be asked of both candidates and may even come from someone outside of their precinct. Candidates, please direct your answers to the public, which is in this case the camera, and let's begin. Each of you have a 1 minute for an opening statement. Candidate Victoria Garcia Snyder, you were drawn first. Please begin.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity and being here on this beautiful Sunday afternoon. My name is Victoria Garcia Snyder. I am a lifelong resident of Albion. I graduated from Albion High School in 1985 and graduated from Albion College in 1989. Shortly after that, I also completed my master's in Student Affairs Administration from Western Michigan University. My husband, Ken, and I have been married for 28 years, and we have raised our family here in Albion. I hope to earn your trust in being elected to the next mayor of Albion.
Thank you very much. Candidate Mayor Dave Atchison, you have 1 minute.
Thank you, Sylvia and Michelle. Thank you for being here, and I appreciate the recorder putting this on. COVID-19 has changed everything in our world, absolutely has impacted how elections are being done and campaigns are being done. So this is a great opportunity for myself, Ms. Snyder, to address not only the recorder and both of you, but the residents and citizens of Albion. So I am the incumbent mayor. I'm completing my first 2-year term, and I am campaigning for re-election which will be my last term. In my campaign, I could sum up with saying it's based on substance, what I've got accomplished and what I've done in the community. Unlike Ms. Snyder, I haven't lived here my entire life. We moved here, my wife and I, in 2015. We have 4 children, 2 of which live here in Albion. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and this should be a very informative evening.
Thank you very much. All right, our first question comes from Michelle.
From you.
No, right.
Oh, that one. Okay. Sorry, blew it already. This is for Victoria. Steve Tompkins of Precinct 1 and Eddie Williams of Precinct 3 had similar questions. They are concerned about food insecurity in Albion during the winter. They want to know, if in office, what will you do to bring a less expensive grocery store to Albion, and how will you deal with the ongoing food security issue? And you have 3 minutes to answer.
Thank you. So I know that there has been a survey already conducted citywide, but from my understanding, unfortunately, there wasn't an overwhelming response of folks who, voiced their opinions. Like I said, I've lived here all my life, and, Fall Posh was really the only grocery store that we had. As a younger person, we did have the IGA, but then closed, and so Fall Posh really was the only game in town. And over the years, from going from Fall Posh to Family Fare, we have seen increase in pricing, where many folks don't feel that they could afford to shop at that grocery store. So people like myself, we go out of town, so we have to plan a trip to do our grocery shopping. And that's unfortunate because a lot of folks here don't have the transportation means to get out of town to find affordable options. So I would like to be able to continue with the entities that have started that process of looking at bringing in alternative options for another type of grocery store. Not necessarily another dollar store that provides some foods, but I know a lot of folks really are concerned about the type of produce and fruits that they can attain here in town. So being able to provide that type of service, that full line grocery store, would be important to me as well as a mother. In regards to other options, with the food banks that, we have here in town, there's a lot of wonderful volunteers that make sure that, folks who are in need of food have that opportunity to come and pick that up or, sign up to have them delivered. So I hope that that will be an operation that we can also continue in the next several years.
Great, thank you. Mayor Atchison, your turn. Same question, I'll repeat it. Steve Tompkins of Precinct 1 and Eddie Williams of Precinct 3 had similar questions. They are concerned about food insecurity in Albion during the winter. They want to know, if in office, what will you do to bring a less expensive grocery store to Albion, and how will you deal with the ongoing food insecurity issue?
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. So that's a very good question. I know that's important to a lot of the folks here in the community. We do have a problem with food insecurity and access to produce, vegetables, and other things. And so I'm going to continue doing some of the things that we started during my first term, and we are making a little bit of progress. It's slow. The city is not going to open up a city-funded managed grocery store, so we need to entice another company to come in. And the progress we've made so far is we've made a very good relationship with an owner of Save-A-Lot and have brought them in. They've looked at the community, sat down and talked with multiple leaders in the community, and they're very interested. COVID-19 disrupted that, and so when things settle out a little bit more, we're going to re-engage with that conversation. But some of the things that we have done to deal with the food insecurity, and I know winter is just around the corner. One of the things we did with the COVID-19, when that first came upon us and was disrupting lives, and asked the governor asking everybody to stay home, stay safe, we immediately looked at the impact on the seniors who are most at risk and most likely to be sequestered for long periods of time, so to speak. So I went out and turned to the senior millage folks, that board, and was able to get a grant, and we delivered over 2,500 additional meals, free meals, and engaged the Albion Ministerial Association to be part of that delivery network, local churches, working with the Albion Homer United Way and various other nonprofits in the local community. And I think that highlights one of the greatly underused resources within our community that I've been working with and working on to increase, and that's the Albion Ministerial Association. And we've had very good success with that. But what we're going to do to get a second grocery store in here is we have to continue to think outside the box. Produce and vegetables can be accessed in a multiple of ways. I would love to have a produce market. I mean, everybody would love to have a Fred Meyer's, possibly a Sam's Club or something. The likelihood of that coming because of the economics and population base, not going to happen anytime soon. But we are building relationships and working to bring Save-A-Lot or something similar in here to increase food availability. Love to have a butcher shop, those kinds of things, which are probably more doable than immediately getting a grocery store. But we have to think outside the box.
Thank you, Mayor Atchison. Okay, this question is also for you, Mayor Atchison. Denisha Brewer of the 5th Precinct asks, our culture in this community has been combative for a number of years. How do you plan to develop a culture that fosters a sense of community pride and unity?
Okay. I'll continue doing some of the same things I've done. I think the Community Unity Service Day, which I initiated and got established 2 years ago, we've done the second annual one. That goes a long way to bring a variety of people in, engaged in the community with each other, doing things for the community to make it a better place. I'd be one of the first people to say that, yeah, the culture has been rather combative for the last 4 years. I think we had a marvelous city manager that the whole community, almost to a person, loved and respected. Everybody didn't agree with everything, but that's normal with human beings. And so since I've been here, there's been living here in Albion, there's been some stress and some back and forth. I think a lot of it is focused on a small number of people that continue to love the stress and the drama. And so if we get past that, that'll go a long way. But I continue to work with the Ministerial Association, and I keep coming back to that because that is an underutilized resource. And I've asked them to consider coming up with 1 or 2 days a year where all, if not the majority of the churches at least, have a message that is all on the same theme. It's going to be different from church to church, of course, but an example would be in June's, what's God's vision of what a father should do, could do, et cetera. And I think that'll help unite the community. The more things we do and events that we have where we get people from every precinct turning out and participating, both as active participants in whatever that community event is, and just patrons enjoying whatever it might be, that helps bring the community together. We've got to continue to have dialogues and be open to people bringing things forward. People need to bring things forward, and we need to look at those. I think we've done a pretty good job of addressing issues that have come up in my 2 years. And I hope that some of the other questions get into some of the specific areas, and I'll touch on things that I've done, things we've accomplished here in the community. I mean, the role of the mayor is multifaceted, and I think different people have a different vision of that. But one of the most important things that the mayor does is out there setting an example, is engaged in the community, involved in community service, engaged in what goes on in this community, and sets the example to be part of the community is to participate. So that's part of what the mayor does, and that brings the community together.
Thank you. Candidate Garcia Snyder. The same question for you. Denise Brewer from the 5th Precinct asks, our culture in this community has been combative for a number of years. So since you haven't been the mayor, what would you do, or what would be your strategy and to address unity and community pride?
I actually used to work for an administrator. 20 plus years I've worked in higher education. So whenever there was issues, conflicts, strife on campus, we were set and ready to have forums, open houses, conversation, dialogues, bringing everybody together to have that opportunity to be heard. And I think that's the biggest issue that we have in our community, is that people feel like they're not being heard. So we need to be able to find, especially in the times of COVID, find safe ways to be able to have these open forums where everybody can be invited to come. We have the city council, the mayor, also others that work with the public directly, like the chief of police. So have everybody at one designated spot, whether we have it at the band shell, at the park, whether we have it at the Bone Theater, but having that opportunity to have open conversation, that's the biggest thing. You can't expect to have answers overnight. Things have to get worked on. But if we work as a community, that's going to be the biggest thing. And then, like having events that celebrate our diversity in our community, being able to share our experiences. The Festival of the Forks has always been great. Unfortunately, this year we didn't get to celebrate that, but also having things for our children to do and participate in. I know families that continually go out of town to provide their kids those type of activities, where we should be able to find something here in town to provide for them as well. Because they're going to other communities, they're going to Jackson, to Marshall, to Concord. We can have those here in a safe way. So again, being able to provide activities, having the open forum, just to be able so that people feel that they're being heard. And like I said, we may not be able to have that answer right then and there, but it's going to give something for our city government to work on, because we're here. We're here to work for you. That's why you elect people in to represent you, and that's what I hope to see in the future.
So just to clarify, would you have a schedule of events
Yes.
posted, something like that,
Yeah,
a calendar
so
event?
like just to have an event, scheduled a month in advance so people can free up their calendar, make sure that they're not scheduling anything else, to have that opportunity if they truly feel like there's issues that need to be brought to the table. If they feel like, they've tried and tried and tried and nobody's listening, that would be that ideal opportune time.
Thank you.
Great. Vicki again. Linda Colmoden, who lives in the 3rd precinct, asks, how will you address the issue of systemic racism in our community?
So, we have it at every level. Folks have come to me with specific instances of things that have felt like, they've been treated unfairly, probably because of the skin of their color. It's very hard to quantify that, but we can not just turn a blind eye to it. We need to be able to investigate those type of situations. We need to be able to create a culture where it's known that that's not acceptable in this community. And so being able to work with the different businesses, like I have in mind, again, creating committees that will look at the businesses that we have, including the lenders, that'll look at what we are providing for educational opportunities, that will look at our city government, that will look at ADPS. So kind of give a little more in-depth of the practices that they have in place. Also kind of going with that with the landlords, how do the landlords have standard practices for who they rent to? So it's very large, but if we tackle it a little bit at a time, it can be done. People will understand that it's a work in progress and that at least we're making the effort to, address them and correct these type of behaviors. So I want, again, to have input from our entire community. I am not afraid to sit down and talk to a specific group or an individual, and that's what I'm here for, is to serve our community.
Great, thank you. Now, Mayor, Linda Colmoden, who's from the 3rd precinct, she asked that this question be asked of both candidates, so we'll ask you, how would you address the issue of systemic racism in the Albion community?
Okay, so I'll echo some of what Ms. Snyder said. Yes, we have racism in Albion, and we have problems with racism across our country. I think part of it is defining what we mean when we say systemic racism, what we mean by racism, et cetera. But I'll also start out and kind of detail the things that I have done, that we have done city council in the city since I've been on city council as mayor, and make sure that everybody's aware of that. So before the national outrage over the horrendous death of George Floyd, which I don't think there's anybody that has not condemned that, including myself. I've come out in writing and condemned that. But before that ever happened, we had an issue that came up here with hiring practices. And so the question was somebody treated equitably and fairly, and are our city hiring practices equitable? And so I put that forward for what I did to begin with when it came to my attention, because somebody mentioned it to me, as I turned to the NAACP, Bob Dunklin, president of the NAACP, and one of my colleagues on council, Councilwoman Lynn Reed, told them what had been brought to my attention, asked them to look at it through their network and tell me what their conclusions were. They did that. We all three agreed that there were things that didn't look right. It didn't make us feel comfortable with our hiring practices. Put it forward for the city council to vote on, and the council did unanimous to have an external third-party review. That was conducted. Additionally, shortly after the death of George Floyd, the ADPS policies and procedures were pushed forward to the NAACP and to Community to Care's task force headed up by Harry Bonner to have an external review of those outside of city government. I pushed for the city council to establish a ADPS Minority Community Liaison Officer position, and that was tabled by my colleagues on council. I took the Obama Foundation Challenge, 8 Can't Wait, and I pledged that the city would become a My Brother's Keeper city, and that was done in July. I reached out to the NAACP. I attempted to initiate a community task force, and of course, we now have a resolution where that's being formed to cover all of these things that Ms. Snyder addressed and many more via community task force.
Okay.
Great,
very
thank you.
Mayor Dave Atchison, this question comes from Tom Hunsdorfer of the 6th Precinct. He asks, do you have any regrets about things you did or said during your first term as Albion's mayor? Are there things you learned about city government during your first term that will make you more of an effective mayor if you're elected a second term?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that everybody who's honest will admit that they are a failed, flawed human being, and I'm no different than anybody else. And so from time to time, I say things that come across and are may have the best of intentions, but weren't received that way. I think that most of the community can recall a post dealing with COVID-19. My intent was to bring awareness to the fact that the most affected community is the African American community, and they have more at stake for social distancing just because of the percentages and the inequitable health outcomes. That did not go over very well, was not received by the community by a wide margin. And so I absolutely accept the responsibility that I offended people. Wasn't my intent, but my honest, sincere apology, I took pains to make sure that it was clear that my apology was not, well, if I offended you, I'm very sorry for having done that. You know, I own that right up from the very beginning. Clearly, I offended people. It wasn't my intent, but that doesn't make any difference. That's people were offended, and I apologized for that. And that was sincere, and I still regret that that happened. The message didn't come across very good. So everybody makes mistakes. I think the intent and what I've got done does also speak for itself. I get passionate about things. Some of the things that my buttons, if you want to put it that way, some of the things that set me off is hypocrisy, is playing games and pretending one thing and saying something else, and you know the ulterior motive and all the rest of that, which politics are filled with. And so that's definitely one of the things that I've learned with local government is 9 times out of 10, some people are going to like what you do, some people are not going to like what you do, like what you say. So in the end, you just figure out what you think is the right thing to do and stick with that. And it's sometimes going to be popular and sometimes it isn't going to be popular. You know, part of my campaign in 2018 was more transparency. And so that word, I won't say came back to haunt me, but that word was used over and over and over again anytime somebody wanted to make an issue out of something, and it questioned whether or not they actually understand what the word means, because we have been very transparent.
Thank you. For you, candidate Garcia Snyder, we have to word it just a little bit differently. So we're going to ask you, according to the 2019 U.S. Census data, the city of Albion is 61% white, 32% African American, and 8% Latino or Hispanic. In your campaign literature, you talk about wanting more diversity and inclusion in city government. Would you elaborate on what that means?
Yeah, having more representation at the table. We have a lot of committees that serve our community, but I believe that there are barriers currently, you know, going back to that systematic racism. The policies that are in place for somebody to get on the committee, they have to be pretty clean and free of any type of debt or misunderstanding that may have been with the city government. So there are folks that, you know, are passionate about the community, that want to be able to serve the community, but maybe for one reason or another can't get placed on a specific committee because of the certain policies that are in place. So I would like to be able to at least investigate, like I said, top down, the practices, the policies that are in place, because that is a big thing for me. Making sure that diversity, equity, and inclusion are a part of our everyday work. And so being at the helm of how that city kind of processes what we do and how we serve our public, that's going to be something that we want to look into to be able to provide those opportunities for folks to be able to serve as well. So, that's just kind of like my fabric of my daily work, making sure that students that I do work with on a daily basis have the same opportunities as everybody else. And so, working with the city government, I want to make sure that everybody in the city has opportunities to be able to serve in the capacity that they would like to. So that's kind of like where I stand with that.
Thank you. And we have 2 more questions to go, candidates, and then we'll be wrapped up.
All right, Vicki. Jim Arnett of the 6th Precinct asks, what do you see as 1 or 2 big issues that face Albion, both going through COVID-19 and post-COVID-19? And how do you propose addressing those issues?
So, like I said, I am in communication with a lot of young families. And the biggest issues that, kind of come to me are the opportunities for the kids. They want to know, how can I get my kids involved? Because for the most part, they're cooped up too, and it's very difficult. We used to have a very robust recreational department. And I know that with COVID, there's been restraints on that. But even before COVID hit, I was not seeing our public parks utilized in the way that they used to be. So I want to be able to bring back those type of opportunities for kids to get out and enjoy the fresh air, and be taught, how to be a team player, how to lose and win with grace. Those are things that, I think are kind of being missed right now. So those are opportunities, again, that I want to look a little bit closer into. I know that we have a recreation millage coming up very soon, and I really am worried that if we don't start doing things for our youth, parents may think, well, what am I paying for? Why would I approve another millage for something that my kids are not going to make use out of? Like I said, I know families that are going to other communities. So we really need to look very deeply into what our practices are, and to figure out how can we address that. Again, another top priority for me is just being available, making sure that citizens are being heard, that they are feeling welcomed downtown. I believe that, I know that, I hear it, I see it, we need to address that. And so being able to kind of work as a team to figure out what can we do as a community to have that more welcoming environment downtown. And so those are kind of like my 2 biggest agenda items if I am elected.
Thank you.
Great. Mayor Atchison, a slightly different question. This one from Tanya Arnett of the 6th Precinct. She asks, Albion is a culturally and racially diverse, unique, small town. What systems need to be changed or put into place to economically and socially level access for minorities? And what would you do to make Albion's diversity a point of pride and a model for the state?
Okay, that's a great question. Ties in with several other things we've talked about too. We do have a very diverse community, which is something that virtually everybody in this community talks about and views it as one of our biggest resources. And so I'm a large proponent that what we don't have a lot of in this community that would help to bring people together is representative arts and other cultural things. I mean, music is a very large part of this community, and we have music events. but we don't have a lot of public art. And so one of the things that I've done to promote focusing on our culture and arts from this community is to establish an Arts and Culture Commission. And we're getting that staffed. And part of the function is to raise funds. It is to promote art in public places. Another example is the city now has a poet laureate, Stella Santamaria. And that was just done at the last council meeting, and she will be publicly welcomed to the community on Saturday the 31st. And she will be reciting 2 original works of poetry. We talk about events in the community. I would love to see and have pushed for a range of those things. I've been frustrated since I've arrived here in Albion that we don't have a dynamic, robust recreation program. But the recreation director works with the city manager, and the specifics on that really falls primarily on the recreation director, the city manager. Council sets policies. We do a variety of things to encourage that. But there again, there's another role for the mayor that I've taken on. We talk about events in the community. COVID-19 disrupted everything. People locked at home. I initiated an arts and essay contest and was able to get local merchants to put up $1,500 in prizes. And we had poetry, we had essays, we had painting, there was actually some sculpture. And so there are ways to provide some events and things and opportunities. We have a poetry recitation contest coming up. They're small things, but when COVID-19 and the decision was made to furlough all of the recreation employees and the decision made to basically shut down the recreation department, we've got to look for other things to do and partner with private industry, which I've been pushing hard, and I would love to have a lot more city leagues. The churches are stepping up and they're getting into that too. So there's a lot to be done in that area, but arts and culture and arts and music can bring our community together.
Thank you, Mayor Atchison. All right, this next question is for you. It's our last one to complete our 15 minutes. It comes from Catherine Keys. So, Mayor Atchison, what action steps would you suggest to bring diversity in the public safety department, the committees you appoint, or even City Hall?
Okay. So that's an excellent question, because we do have a real issue with diversity in the Albion Department of Public Safety. What we can't do is hire based on race. That's federally and state backs it up. That's against the law. You don't hire based on race. But ways that we can improve diversity within our public safety department is we have to be more competitive. That's part of the problem, is recruiting people that are interested in it. Youth Cadet League for the police would be a great way to get people involved and look at that as a potential career. And that's something that I know that Chief Scott is working on with Ms. Wanda Kemp, and I applaud that, and we'll support that as that comes forward. But the diversity in our public safety is an issue. It may be because of systemic racism. A lot of it at present, because I know Chief Kip has been trying to recruit and hire, a lot of that is based on he has difficulty getting people that are qualified African American to apply and accept the positions. They typically can find other positions in other organizations, whether it's public safety or other things, where they'll make more money, have better benefits. And so we have to be more competitive, and we need to look at ways to do that. So as far as increasing diversity, that was one of the reasons that I wanted to establish a minority community liaison position. Chief Scott Kitt works very hard with the community. He has a great reputation with most community leaders, with the NAACP. He works very hard to have good community relations, and he does events and other things, and I applaud him for that. But it is an issue where we need to figure out what are the things that we can do, and if it means we need to increase the amount of pay, but then you have unions. And so those are negotiated with the union. So there is a limit to what you can do and can't do. That means we just got to keep looking and finding creative ways.
Thank you. For you, candidate Garcia Snyder, What steps do you see, specific steps do you see that needs to be taken to bring diversity to the Public Safety Department, or if you become mayor, the committees that you appoint? And this question was also from Catherine Keyes of the 6th Precinct.
So, living here all my life, I've known many police officers that have served, the police chiefs, and what Mayor Atchison said was correct. It is very difficult to hire in minority police officers because that is, it's a very sought after position, having a minority person in police work. So they're able to kind of take their choice of opportunities. There's other departments that pay way more than we can offer. And so it's just been a challenge all along. The folks that I remember that have served our public safety have been, lifelong Albion residents. So they grew up here and then they decided to serve the community in that capacity. Again, with Mayor Atchison, having a cadet academy, having those opportunities for our youngsters to kind of get involved in a way where they can start learning about becoming law enforcement, and then possibly and hopefully that they'll want to continue and stay here and serve their community too. With the fact that our ADPS has shrunk in size since the 80s, we just don't have the funding for it. So we do have to be able to come up with those type of incentives to draw the qualified candidates here who would say, yes, I want to move to Albion, I want to raise my family in Albion, and I want to serve the community as a police officer. But kind of going back to the hiring practices, I have, in every institution that I've worked for, I've sat on the diversity committee in hiring. So I am very well versed with the hiring practices, the do's and don'ts, and making sure that things are equal across the board. So again, I would love to be able to work with Chief Kip in making sure that those type of practices are also held when he is conducting his interviews and searches.
Thank you very much. Candidates, thank you for participating today, and thank you for watching. And please vote on November 3rd. From Michelle Mueller, myself, Sylvia Benavides, and the whole Recorder staff, thank you.